To Versailles.
The morning came cool, crisp, and wet from the drizzle of rain the night before. I woke up first and gently shook my sister. Leia, I whispered, so as to not disturb Notre Mère, our mother. Leia, wake up. I'm cold and hungry. Leia rolled over and whispered back. Gabrielle, stoke the fire to help warm us up and go back to sleep. We have no bread for your belly. You'll have to wait for Maman to wake up. I nodded and did as my sister said. My stomach growled in protest. Shh, I scolded it. Not now. You heard, Leia. There is nothing for you to eat. It was October 5th, 1789, and the people of Paris were hungry. Every day for the last few months, Notre Mère came home from the market with less and less food for our family to eat. When we had all finally awoken from our slumber, Notre Mère stoked the fire again and checked her coin purse. Un livre, she mumbled under her breath. 1 livre for the week. That's only 3 loaves of bread for the whole week. How do they expect us to survive when bread is so expensive? She closed her coin purse and turned to us. Leia, help Gabrielle get cleaned up and dressed. Try to look your best, both of you. We need to go to the market to find something for breakfast. Oui, Maman, Leia responded. Yes, Mother. Leia brushed my hair, and we brushed our teeth, straightened our dresses, left the house, and walked down the street to the market. Even though it was still fairly early in the morning, the market was bustling. The ladies of Paris were crowding the market streets, exchanging the daily gossip and commenting on the news of the day. Can you believe it? The woman in front of me hissed to her friend. He wants 6 souls for his bread. 6! Last week he charged 5, and I thought that was expensive. 6 souls. I did the math in my head. 1 livre is worth 20 souls. So we could buy 3 loaves of bread and have 2 souls remaining. 3 loaves of bread for 3 people to eat for 5 days? My stomach growled again. I know, I sighed. That just isn't enough food for all of us. As we walked towards the center of the market, I saw a woman standing on the fountain. Her face was red with anger. Her fist was high in the air, and she carried a drum around her waist. She yelled as a crowd of women gathered around her. Thieves! She screamed. King Louis and his court are robbing us. They are robbing us of our right to life. How will we survive if we can't afford to buy food? Thieves! The crowd responded. Every week the king raises the price of bread and grains, and we suffer more because of it, the woman continued. I looked up at Maman, but she was focused on the woman standing on the fountain. Thieves! Maman yelled. King Louis and his court are thieves. I grabbed Leia's hand and looked up at her. What do you think is happening? I asked. She looked back down at me, then at Notre Mère, then back towards the woman on the fountain. She didn't say anything. The woman beat her drum and spoke again. King Louis sits high in his palace at Versailles, while his people starve here in Paris. We must march to the palace of Versailles. We must knock on the king's door, and we must demand our bread. The crowd cheered as they raised their fists in support.
À Versailles!
They chanted, to Versailles! The woman beat her drum again. Suddenly, like a school of fish, the whole crowd started moving toward the outskirts of Paris. I held tightly onto Leah's hand and looked up at Notre Mère. Mama! She looked down at me and said plainly, we have to go because we must fight for our right to eat and live. Try to stay as close to me as possible. You might lose me. There are so many people in the crowd. But hold on to your sister's hand tightly. Whatever you do, don't lose your sister. Do you understand me, Gabrielle? I nodded and squeezed Leah's hand. The whole crowd started walking together, fists raised high into the air and chanting, "À Versailles!" We started the 21-kilometer walk to the king's palace. At first, only a few hundred women marched together. À Versailles! As we left the streets of Paris, more and more people joined, both men and women. The king is full of bread while we starve in the street. À Versailles! Soon we numbered in the thousands. 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 strong we must have been, forging our path through the French countryside. We marched for 6 hours until we saw King Louis's grand palace high above us, glistening in the autumn rain. We stopped at the closed palace gates, and the woman stopped playing her drum. Our chanting had ended, but the air was thick with anger. I can't see anything, I hissed to Leah. What is happening? Leah stood on her tiptoes to look above the crowd as far as she could see. There's a man, she said. He's at the gates and speaking to the woman with the drum. I don't know what they're saying. Now he's opening the gates, and 6 women are going inside with him. They closed the gates behind them. We waited and listened to the murmurs run through the crowd. What do you think is happening inside? They asked. Do you think they are meeting with the king? Do you think they will be able to help us? Suddenly, cheers came from the front of the crowd. Leah? I asked. They're coming back out, all of them. The woman with the drum yelled to the crowd. We met with King Louis. The air quickly grew silent, wanting to hear more. He has agreed to stock our market with bread at a fair price. He will help us. Everyone cried out in happiness and joy. People all around were hugging and laughing. We had won. The women of Paris had stood up to King Louis, and we had gotten our bread. Paris wouldn't starve after all. And all it took was for us to stand up and make our voices heard. I looked up at Leah and squeezed her hand. She looked back down at me and smiled.
Discuss. Why did the women go to Versailles?